will be recorded and not the Q&A. Is that okay for you? Okay.
Yeah.
So now I leave the floor for you, James.
Sure. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. You guys, bear with me. I'm gonna start my deck and
So while you are looking for your deck, maybe Colleen, tell us, where are you from?
Sure. I'm from California. I live in Northern California. I work at Stanford. And I'm a ODC member. And I've reviewed before, but I've attended the session before, but it's always good to get a refresher.
Okay, nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Okay, so you can feel free to ask some question in the chat box. I will manage that to the speakers directly.
there's such a small group. Just jump in if you have if anyone has a question, just or wants to say something. Just join in. Good to see you, Colleen. Okay, so guys, this is some stuff I put together. I actually put this together originally. I did a tour of China and several many Chinese universities, and I don't know if you guys know what's going on in China, but there's a big push to publish in China. They're requiring Australian Business Deans Council lists A publications just to get a degree at many schools over there, and so they're really participating in the process now. They're we get at the journals I work for, we get tons of submissions from China. In fact, at Journal of Small Business Management, which is where I'm a senior editor, 55% of our submissions were from China last year. But most of the scholars there lack the confidence or know-how to review. So they're submitting papers but not reviewing, and so it's created sort of a problem, an imbalance in the system, because as you guys know, our system relies on the work of peer reviewers who are kind of you exchange your professional service in exchange for there being people there to review your work. So I did a speaking tour there, and as part of it, I was doing a how to do a review to provide sort of that confidence. And so I sort of thought I put together some of the best practices I've seen over my 21 years in academia, and so that's what I'm trying to share with share it with the ODC community today as well. And I've done this for a few years. So if you've attended this workshop before, this is going to be similar. I've altered it some, but it's going to be similar to sort of what you've seen before. So just about me, real quick. I'm the ODC program chair this year. As I said, I'm senior editor at Journal of Small Business Management. I'm an associate editor at a couple of the more well-known change management, org change focused journals, JABS, and Journal Change Management. I've authored over 20 articles on FT 40, 45, 50 list. That list has expanded since I started. It was 40 when I started. It's up to 50 now. And I'm on some editorial boards as well. So all of this just to say I've developed, I'm sorry for this sort of monument to myself here on this slide. I'm just trying to impress that I've developed these insights over a long period of time, and that's where they're coming from. So I'll start with what makes a good review. So this is the first question that always comes up, and a good review has a clear big picture assessment of the manuscript. A good review is not, hey, on page 6 you misspelled dubious, on page 10 you misspelled methods. That's not what really makes, that's not what editors are looking for from your review. They're looking for a big picture assessment of the manuscript. Another thing that makes a good review is highlighting issues in a constructive way. So one trend I've noticed over my career is that, and I think this comes from maybe the online culture that kind of developed from the time, when I started as a doctoral student, we had online, but there wasn't all the social media and stuff. The reviewers have gotten nastier as I've sort of gone along. And so it's become more of tearing down the paper, which is, of course, part of what you do, but it's gone from like, hey, this could be better. Hey, this is a problem, to you did a bad job on this, and it's become, the tone has become nastier, and so a good review highlights the problems in a constructive way, like less nasty, not quite as mean as I'm seeing sometimes. And then finally, specific comments that the author can respond to. I mean, it's very frustrating for an author to write a paper. Remember, someone's poured their heart and soul into this thing, and then you get sort of broad, vague comments, which are just basically, I don't like this. And so you want to offer specific comments that the author can respond to when you are constructing your review. So those are sort of big picture things that make for a good review. Oh, sorry, went too far. So let's talk about the specifics, how you want to structure your review. These are some best practices that I've sort of, developed on how to actually do it. So, the prior slide was showed here, big picture things, the sort of, 30,000 feet idea of what a good review looks like. This is going to be more of how you actually do it. So what I like to see is I like to with my opening paragraph of the review, I like to summarize the paper's aim and sort of describe, hey, this paper seeks to link, change management, change acceptance interventions to, positive outcomes, commitment to change, or something like that. So I like to summarize in the opening paragraph sort of what the paper's trying to do. And I also like to give a positive or two about the paper. So, in the consulting world, they call this the sandwich method. You say something nice, then you deliver the critique, and then you say something nice again. Then you sandwich the bad news in between the good news. So, tell them that you understand what's going on in the paper. You understand what they're trying to do. Say a positive thing or two, and then pivot to the issues you've identified. So, however, despite these good things, there are also issues that harm the paper's contribution. There are always going to be issues that you identify. I mean, that's your role as a peer reviewer. And so pivot to there. And then, if you'd like, in the final couple of sentences, you can summarize those issues. Big picture. Again, big picture, not spelling issue or grammar issue, but this contribution fails to sort of extend the literature on social capital. The contribution that's stated here fails to sufficiently extend theory, something like that. So the reason we do this, the reason we do this is that it establishes that you gave care to the review. So by summarizing, hey, I understand what you're trying to do here, you're showing the reviewer that you read the paper, that you understand what's going on. And believe it or not, guys, especially today with this, like I said, the system's been overwhelmed. Peer reviews are not, the quality of them has gone down throughout my career. You wouldn't believe it. Sometimes you'll get a paper back and just be like, I'm not sure this person actually really read this paper, the peer reviewer. So it establishes that you gave care to it. It establishes that you were fair in your assessment, and it helps ease the impact of those negative comments. Remember, we've all done this work. I mean, you submit a paper, it's a position of vulnerability. So you want to ease the impact of those negative comments as best you can, just to be a kind person. So that's what that does. That's really the importance of that opening paragraph. I mean, I've seen some people who don't even do an opening paragraph. They just start in with their comments. And I always like to do an opening paragraph because it gives you the opportunity to establish that you gave care to it, and to sort of to cushion that blow of the negative comments. So getting into the body of your review. So you've done that opening paragraph. What's the body of your review look like? The first thing you want to make sure you do is number your comments. The reason for that is the editor wants to be able to refer back to your comments when they're providing that decision letter. So reviewer 1 in their comment 2 points out that your contribution doesn't quite meet the bar or something like that. And so when you write in a free form, or just don't number, or write in a free form, it causes all kinds of headaches for the editor in writing that letter. And it also is more difficult for the submitter to respond to what's going on or to understand what's going on. And so by clearly delineating your comments by numbering them, you do a pretty good service there to the editor and to the submitter. Okay. For the conference, now, if you're reviewing for a journal, I would say it will probably need to be more than this. But for the conference, you need to provide around at least 4 or 5 comments. If you want to do more, if you want to do 10, if it's needed to do 10, you can. But I think just to show good faith, you should provide 4 to 5 comments to the authors at least for a review for a conference. Okay. And the way you organize them is really up to you, but some people prefer to organize them in the most important comments to the least important. So if you want to start with, the contribution or some methodological flaw, those are big deals, and then end with, the smaller things, the narrative flow is not as good or something like that. You can do that, or you can just do it chronologically. I've done it both ways. I typically tend to go with chronological. But there have been times where, especially when it's pretty clear the paper doesn't meet the bar, I always just usually, in that case, I'll start with the big problem up front and just make it clear in the first comment. But you can handle that however you want. So it's chronological or in levels of importance. Okay, so that's good. It's good. Just a good tip for how you organize the body of it. All right. So let's actually get into sort of what not to do. So do not ever write that the paper should be accepted or rejected in your review. That is the decision that's up to the associate editor, or in my case, the program chair. And if you put in your review that this paper should be accepted, you have put me in a box. You put your associate editor, you've put the program chair in a box that it's really hard for them to get out of. So say, that you haven't seen, like, for example, you've done the review, there's a fatal flaw, like there's just a fatal issue with this, but you just haven't caught it, which happens. And you've said this paper should be accepted in your review. Well, then you put a lot of pressure on when the editor has to say, no, actually there's a fatal flaw. Well, the author's going to be like, but this reviewer said it should be accepted. Why is my paper rejected? And so your job is to assess the paper. It is not to give recommendations. Okay, that is the editor, or in our case, of the conference or program chair's decision. Okay, try not to give vague comments. If, like, for example, if there's a problem, point to the page number. Hey, this passage on page 12 doesn't make sense. The theory you're using on page 11 just doesn't make sense. Point to page numbers, provide specifics. If it's something that's overarching, there's not a page number with it, still be specific. Hey, this social capital theory framing doesn't make sense here, or something like that, because of X, Y, and Z. Okay. Don't highlight minor issues. And what I mean by that is don't excessively highlight minor issues. So if there's one typo, there's no reason to point out the typo other than just, you can maybe put that at the end and say minor comment. I noticed a typo on page 11. You might want to fix that. You can put it at the end. Don't make it a centerpiece of your review. That's not what this process is for. If you want to help the authors out by pointing it out, hey, I noticed on page 9 you have this typo, or this or that. That's fine. There's a mistake in this table. You can point that out to them, but make it a minor comment. Make it at the end of your review, and don't make it a centerpiece of what you're doing. Now, if the issues are glaring, if there's just typos all over the document, or if there's just real problems with the grammar and syntax, then you go ahead and say, hey, this is glaring. This is distracting from what's going on. Then you can make that a part of centerpiece, a part of the main part of your review, but only do that if it's glaring. Okay. Otherwise, put it at the end, or whatever. Okay. All right. So, how to actually do the review? What you're looking for in the sort of the heart of the paper. For the introduction, look for, does the introduction identify a gap or a tension or a problem? If the introduction is just sort of general, and just introducing the topic, but it doesn't identify a gap or some tension that's being resolved by the paper, you want to address that. That's something that you're looking for. Does the introduction state the theoretical contributions? The whole point of these papers is to make a theoretical contribution, unless it's a practice oriented paper. So I should probably add there, especially for our division, does the introduction state the theoretical or practical contributions or both? Like if it doesn't state those, that's not really doing a good job of motivating the paper. And so that's what you're looking for in that introduction. So you want to review the introduction with an eye toward that. That's sort of the criterion you're using when you're reviewing the introduction part of the paper. For the data, are the data generalizable and free of causality concerns? Are they cross-sectional? Is the analysis appropriate? So if they're doing a regression with if they're doing like a mediated model with a cross-sectional design, then that's a problem, right? I mean, it's really hard to draw strong inferences from data collected at all one point in time, and the paper's laying out a sequential process of mediation. If it's a qualitative paper, are they relying on like 5 interviews? Do they have enough interviews? If it's those types of issues. Are the data, when I say generalizable, I mean, is the sample sufficient? Is the context sufficient? Is the design, are the measures separated in time and things like that? Are they using the right analysis method given their data? Are they using regression when like a simple t-test would have been the better approach or something like that? So what you're looking for there is, just an overarching view of the data that they're using in this paper, and does it work? Does it work for the type of question that they're trying to answer? So those are 2 big things you're looking for, okay? In the paper. Some other tips. So I left out like what you're looking for in hypotheses and discussion and all that, but I mean the main point is, look to see if the paper's coherent and they're getting to their contribution. Some other tips, just to help you with reviews. Try to hit the high notes. So I was in a session many years ago with the editor of Journal Management, a guy named Jim Combs, and he said, I always know someone who's inexperienced at reviewing when I get a review and they've just pointed out every little minor detail. Try to hit the high notes. What the big problems are. Those numbered comments should really hit big problems. If you want to point out the small stuff, put it at the end, like I said, and make it a minor part of it. But try to hit the high notes. What's really wrong? Hey, your sample size is too small for what you're trying to do. You're trying to draw inferences from 5 qualitative interviews. That's not strong enough. You've done a t-test when you should have done a regression. Whatever. Your introduction has not motivated the study appropriately. You haven't told me what the contribution is or what the gap is that you're filling. It's fine to be direct. You can very clearly point out what's wrong. Just try not to be nasty. There's no reason to be nasty in these things. We're all putting ourselves out there by submitting these papers. There's no we don't need to be ugly. And then, like I said before, if you address the small things, be sure to clarify that they're glaring or you're just bringing it to their attention. Okay. So you follow these steps, you'll do a good review, and you'll help me out. You'll help out your associate editors when you're reviewing for journals, and it'll help us have a more successful conference. It'll make you a more valuable and higher quality reviewer. So that's me. There's my information. Any questions before we switch it to Nina's presentation? Happy to, or anyone discuss anything? I'm happy to talk about anything.
So I have a question, James. So thank you. It's very, it's nice to have all of that reminded. For the conference, I think there is a framework, no, where you have to reply to very direct questions, isn't it?
Yes, but they're basically structured the way I laid that out. So
okay.
You'll answer all the questions that the prompts that they give you by reviewing it the way I laid out there.
Okay. No, so thank you, and thank you. I want to highlight the fact it's very nice when you have a review, you get your paper or your contribution with something like a thank you to have submitted something, even if it's say you need to have a lot of revision to do, but at least it's because it's nice to. It's very important that you remind that people are really putting their heart and soul and in the job. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it is, it's just hard to remember. Like our profession is, most people kind of live it, right? I mean, and so it's a part of our identity a lot of times. And so, I mean, it's just crushing when you get these nasty reviews and even when they're not nasty, but you still, you have your work rejected. It's very hard on people. And so I try to be cognizant of, understanding, where people are coming from and trying to be constructive,
Yeah.
when you do it. And so it's important. And I've had to deliver a lot of negative, news over the years. And so I try to be cognizant of that and not get jaded and make sure that people, we're fair to people and treat them with respect.
It's very, and also just want to highlight one thing. I was rejected one time, and also I had a recommendation for another journal who might be interested. And it was great to have, this is not what your paper does not fit with that journal, but if you make that correction, maybe you can submit to this journal. And it was great. So
Yeah. So that's you usually so most of these journals, are part of the publishing group, and the publishing group really pushes the journals to suggest other journals within their publishing group to authors. In fact, I mean, I think Sage will like refer it to another journal for you.
yeah,
So yeah, there's that. I mean, I found that typically I kind of have outlets in mind. When my work's rejected, I kind of know where I would like to try next, but that is a nice service and it's helpful, especially to younger scholars who are just getting started.
yeah. Okay. So welcome, David. So does anyone else have some questions?
I have a quick question, more logistically. But I know in the past, like I've gotten some things to review that I was surprised I kind of made it even to me. Are we kind of checking for pages and all that before they get to reviewers?
Yeah,
Um,
so there's a process. So there's an automated process now where they have AI that checks for
Mhm.
page length, excessive page lengths, and author identifying stuff, and then they refer those to me, and I look through them all. So this year, I think we had 14 that didn't make that had glaring issues. So one of them was like, for example, one of them was 63 pages. I just contacted them and was like, look, guys, like 60, there's just not time for you to revise this. So there was one that was like 44, and I contacted the authors like, you guys got to get this down to 40 pages, or I can't, we can't do anything. There's some others. So we've vetted all that. So the ones that the system flagged, I either rejected them out of hand or had the authors revise them. That's not to say that it's not possible that one didn't somehow get through, or whatever, but it's unlikely, I think. The other issue, I think, is that, and you were maybe going here as well, like you get a paper that's misfitted with your interests, as a reviewer, and that can happen. So we have a system that seeks to match reviewers with the paper topic. But we're a broad division. I mean, I think this happens everywhere, to be honest with you. But sometimes there's just going to be mismatches, and you just have to do your best to assess the paper on its quality, rather than like specifically your knowledge of its contribution. So, like, I can review a paper that's on mergers and acquisitions from the perspective of like, I don't do that research, but I can look at the perspective of, hey, do these data seem right? Is the argument compelling? Like, I don't know for sure that it's correct because I don't know the literature, but I can make a generalized assessment of the quality of the paper. Now, I don't know how real the contributions are, but I can at least do that. And so if that happens to you, just do your best, as an academic, to sort of assess the quality of the paper versus maybe the strength of the contribution. And I understand it's frustrating when we get misfitted review assignments, but with a large division, it's always difficult to to get a perfect match, but we do have it's not a person doing it anymore. At least the computer's trying to, it takes your profile and what you've stated your interests are and tries to match it with the paper. So there's still going to be mistakes, there's still going to be misfits, but hopefully there'll be fewer than there've been in the past.
Thank you, James. I have a question, but I keep it for the end because it's more general, and I want to hear Nina.
There's only 5 of us here, so I mean, you might as well go for it.
But maybe Nina will give some clue on it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm also
Thank
fine
you.
just to share my screen while you ask. Oh my God.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah, okay. So my question is I am a scholar practitioner, so that means that I do not have any affiliation, and I cannot access the books on the biblio because I do not have access to publication. So that means that the only thing I can do is check on Google Scholar, but I cannot have access to the text. And this is an issue for me because when you have someone saying as in blah 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 as written, and I cannot read it. So
yeah, that's an issue. So interestingly, I've had this question before because as I said, I've done a lot in China, and they have this problem as well. They're blocked basically; they can't even get Google. So yeah, it's a problem. I mean, like I don't want to advise illegal activity, but there are ways to get access to these articles that that's pretty easy without getting them from the official channels. So I'm not advising you to do that, but
yeah, of course. But some, but not all of them.
Yeah. I mean, perhaps through networking, through ODC, you can find colleagues. So even within the United States, in our libraries, we will have there's these weird packages that the publishers sell our libraries, and so sometimes a colleague at another university will not have access to a specific journal, and so they'll email me and be like, hey, could you give me this article? And so we'll do that. So I mean, like that's maybe through your network, try to find access to people who have leverage your network to try to get access to those articles.
So this is what I already do. I send mails to friends. Can you yes, thank you, Colin, but you have to be registered, and I'm not. I do not have any affiliation, and there is no way I pay $5 million for a paper, just for a paper or something. So yes, this is what I do. I send some lists on, but I don't know. Maybe there is something that could be discussed. Maybe in a broader perspective.
So the EU is demanding open access. So my last couple of human relations articles, they've had to be open access. So there should be more availability of open access pieces as well. So hopefully that'll help.
European universities, Magalia, will, because of the open access policy, they will have author accepted manuscripts. The version that is author accepted, they will be allowed by the publisher to put these on the university repositories.
Yeah, but it's not every time, and so it was just an open question. But maybe there is something like maybe for a reviewer you could have access to, I don't know, for a short limited time. I don't know. This is just an open question. So now, Nina, it's up to you. And thank you, James.
Okay, so I have made a very brief PowerPoint as well, trying to sort of bounce off of what James is saying, because James's presentation, I agree with all the stuff you said, James, and so I'm not going to repeat that. So I'm just going to say a little bit about me. I'm a qualitative researcher. I do organizational ethnography. And then I've been writing about and teaching academic writing for quite some time. So just so you know where I'm coming from, this is also, it will also be sort of, hopefully be visible in the presentation. And I just want to start out with echoing some of the stuff that James said. There is no one best way for all writers, and most of us will find it difficult, right? I know that Stephen Barley says I start at the beginning and end at the end, and that seems like it's very easy, but I think he might be at least at one end of a continuum, right? I know when I write, I have periods where I think this is amazing, it's fantastic, I love it, and other periods where I'm still needing to think something through and struggling. So just to echo what James said, be kind, right? Think about this author is also probably not particularly sort of happy about their writing all the time, right? And especially this idea of writing clearly can be really difficult. From the literature and academic writing, we know that there are some of the things that we tend to do is that we tend to forget that our readers cannot see what's inside our head. So if you find yourself reviewing a manuscript where this is the case, at least I try my very best to be, as James said, kind when I make these things clear. I also think that because reviewing is such an important quality improvement process, it's also a potential case for learning, right? So you can learn a lot about academic writing and about your own writing by reading a lot and by doing reviews and talking to other people. So, as James said, when you review with care and constructive comments and hopefully clarity or specificity, right? For me, this means that you think about what you can help this author with. So I tend to read the paper firstly for flow, right? Coherence, clarity of argument, the essential parts, how are they linked together? How is the introduction, the framing, so on and so forth. This is what you'd call the heart or the body of the text, and it relates to the craft of academic writing. In qualitative papers, the golden rule for analysis is show, don't, only tell us. So we need to see examples of how you did your analysis. We need to see the tables, the text that allow us to understand that. And if a paper I'm reviewing does not have this, I know that I will probably struggle in the findings section because it's such an important part of getting there. So looking really at the body first, and then thinking about how can I help this author move their work forward, regardless of the decision that the editor or associate editor will be making. Is there anything that I can offer? And often your reading is an important offer. I find that you tend to, for instance, if you write in your review that the unit of analysis is slipping and the author is writing different purposes on different pages, that's an important help because that makes it very difficult to understand the argument and the flow and the contribution of a paper. And just sharing how you read it and where you, for instance, got lost or where you really struggled because you didn't understand how they did their analysis or why they chose these two theoretical perspectives, that can be really important and a real contribution for the author that then has to work with this, right? And as James said, think about your reader. What is this paper trying to achieve? How might I help, right? Where did I need more detail? Where did I need more of this? Can I share the section, the pages, the lines maybe where this is important, right? And if you've had reviews, this is also a place where you can just think about how would I read this review if I got it as an author. If I am asked to review a paper where I tend to see many major flaws, I sometimes leave it for a little bit. If I find that it's actually sort of upset me and I've spent quite some time on this and I'm a little bit frustrated, I'll leave it for half a day or a day before I get back to it and do the structuring that James talked about. So I sort of get a little bit of distance and now I can think about this reader, the author again. How can I help this author? And I think that because this is a workshop for reviewers, I just wanted to add that it can actually be really helpful as you're starting out in this line of work to pay attention to what you learn as a writer from reviewing. Because academic writing is not only fingers on keys, it's also thinking, reading, talking to colleagues, reviewing, presenting, work in progress. If you think about it as a socially learned craft, you learn this craft, writing, by participation and practice. because a really important element of writing is making decisions, right? Making decisions about when is writing good enough, when is the structure good enough, when how am I editing my own work before I submit it? Will I send it out to one to friendly review? What will I be doing? And what you're reading as a reviewer has also been through this, and it may not be ready yet, and it may need a lot of work. But I think there's a lot of value in learning from reviewing when you think about it as something you can actually take home to your own writing. Maybe there is something in the way that this person presented their framing that you have sometime done, that you can now see from a reviewer's perspective and therefore understand how you might avoid this in your own writing. So that's actually just what I wanted to say. I think this is the last one. And any questions?
I think your last point about you could learn from being a reviewer is really good. I mean, I did so many reviews early in my career, and I really think that seeing it helped me see what a good paper looks like.
Yeah.
I'm just able to, there's no substitute for repetitions of seeing, you read these papers, you're assessing them with a critical eye, and it allows you to understand, how papers that are structured well and make a good contribution, what they look like. And I think that's a great point.
And I think that in this specific subfields in our sort of shared social science, business school, whatever, right? There are also subgenres of what does a good paper look like. So reading and reviewing and engaging with this, for instance, a specific part of that literature will also help you see and understand some of the sort of maybe more informal rules of how to structure a good argument, or how to present or use tables and figures, or how to share data analysis. As a qualitative researcher, you will see that different journals have different ambitions for how much you're allowed to write in your data analysis section. So there is not just one way of doing this. And I think reviewing is also reading and reviewing, for instance, for a conference, but also for journals, is a great way of learning this.
Thank you, Nina. I really appreciate two things of what you said. First is to reminder, that's what I say to people. Well, I'm not a psychic, so you have to be very, very clear when you make an explanation. And also, it's a very good tip that you gave to especially when you read something that you're not familiar with, it's not your field, and to stop it, to leave it for some time and then to come back, because I will tend to keep on trying and trying and trying and stay on the paper, which may not be a good thing. So thank you for highlighting this. Are there other questions? Siddharth, Colleen, do you want to say something, or about David?
Yeah, I'm good. I agree with a lot what you said. Thank you for the presentation.
No, thank you very much. This was extremely useful for somebody like me who's kind of initiating the process of trying to review. I think James did answer this question earlier, but I still wanted to get some more clarification. Let's say you get a paper to review and you're not the domain expert in that paper, or let's say the methodology is not something which you have core expertise on. How do you? I understand that you do your best and you kind of focus on things that are more fundamental and provide your views, but should you be informing this to the editor or the associate editor or not? Just maybe a very basic question, but
So listen, this is going to happen because, especially, this is an ODC reviewer workshop, but I'm hoping this will help you. I think you came here hoping for more general ideas about reviewing, going forward, right? So this is going to happen. It'll happen at the conference. It'll happen for journals because, as I noted, the system is just flooded. I mean, we just need people to review, period. And so, you can handle papers that are outside of your wheelhouse of your domain. What you should do in that case is assess it the best you can, and you'll have an opportunity to do private comments to the AE for journals, and just note in there, hey, I'm not an expert at latent growth modeling, for example, or something. If that's that's an example, of a analysis or something method. Just say I'm not an expert at this. It looks okay from what I know, but I don't know anything. So you should probably just take my notes on whether this is the other parts of the paper. You could even put it in the comments to the authors if you'd like. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but yeah. There's no shame in just admitting, hey, what you don't know. I mean, like you make your points. You can even say, hey, I'm not an expert on merger and acquisition. This paper's about mergers and acquisitions, but this looks good. This doesn't. Kind of thing. So I mean, I think transparency is the right move. And there's no problem
really
with that.
helpful, right?
Yeah, there's no problem with that. There's no problem with that. And the reviewer, the editor will just appreciate that you were willing to do the review, Siddharth. Just to share, there are times when you will have to ask send 10 people, the assignment, the paper to 10 people to get 2 to agree to review it today. I mean, because all these time management books, Deep Work, and all the Tim Ferriss stuff. There's all these podcasts that tell you that are telling younger people to not, you don't waste any time. Reviewing is not, you don't get anything out of that. So especially the younger academics are turning down reviews right and left. So the editors will be happy that you agree to review. Mm-hmm. So just do your best, acknowledge what you don't know, and you'll be fine.
And if I can add something to that, I'll just say that I've tried being sent a manuscript where my assessment was that because of the difference in methodologies used, I needed to flag this with the editor. So I had a conversation with the editor first, and the editor said, I've got these other people lined up. So if you would still do the review and you can just write this to the authors, right? You can still make a helpful contribution, right? And maybe perhaps even because you say that particular thing is not my area of expertise. So I have focused my review on helping you the most in this way. For instance, in this case, it was a question of a really, really good fit theoretically. So I could sort of focus my review on my help there. Yeah. And I think it's sad that young academics think that reviewing is a waste of time, because I know academia is competitive, but it's also collaborative.
Yeah.
Well, there's this proliferation of time efficiency, content that young people are consuming. That's they're not considering that you're supposed to contribute to the profession as a service. They see it as, well, it's time I can't write papers, or I can't, So it's a, and also, like I said, because the entire world now is trying to publish in our journals, the submissions are up 300% almost everywhere. So and again, like I said, a lot of the people that are new to submitting aren't confident enough to review, and so we've got an imbalance in the number of submissions with the number of review teams. And so you guys might notice you're going to get a lot more desk rejections, because we just cannot just send out questionable work, because we're just going to burn all of our review resources. So it's really important that everyone participate in the peer review process as a reviewer going forward. David, I know you've had your hand up for a while.
Thank you. I just wanted to add to the perspective on reviewing when you don't have the expertise. The perspective of someone who's reading it as a non-expert is a really important perspective. And so, what you can offer, and I agree with everything that James and Nina said about being transparent. That's really important. Just let the reader know exactly the perspective that you bring, which could be as a non-expert, and then review it as a non-expert. And that is a really important perspective, because 90% of the readers of your paper are probably not going to be expert in that journal. So it is a really important point of view. And then you can as Nina said, you can really focus on that first pass, which is the logical construction of the paper. Does it make sense? Do I understand what's going on here, even if I don't fully understand all of the methodology, etc.? So it's a really important service, even if you're not an expert.
Exactly. And I just wanted to add also to, I have been smart ignorant, and I have said that to the editor. It's not because I don't know anything that I cannot see if it's good research or not. And because being a researcher is being able to assess is it serious or not. And I have said that to the editor, and of course he was obviously was a little bit desperate. He accepted. He was happy to have a reviewer, but I was very transparent. I would not be able to give to say anything about how the references are good or bad because it's not my field. I have no idea, but I can say if it's logical and if it's good research. And yeah. So, so does anyone else have something to say? So thank you, James and Nina. It was very interesting. I think we have all learned something, and even it's always interesting to have a new perspective of review because, as James said, it's a shame that no one wants to be a reviewer because academia and also all ecosystem, it's a give and take, you know. So it's I hope it will change things. So. Thank you, colleagues. So someone has some things to say to end up.
I just wanted to thank Siddharth and Colleen for coming, and hope to see you in Philadelphia, both of you.
See you there. Thanks again. That was great.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so thank you very much. James, can you send me your slide? So
I sent them to David already.